This is the Gateway Pundit, and we're here with documentarian Christina Radix Viram, who's working on an upcoming film on the Whitmer kidnapping hoax of 2020. She has spent nearly 5 years getting to know this case, its 14 defendants, and has gone through its multiple trials at the state and federal level. Her film, Kidnap and Kill, is planned to release this fall. Thanks for being here, Christina.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
For the benefit of those who don't know about the case, can you give us a quick rundown of the Whitmer kidnapping hoax of 2020?
Yes, it's kind of a complicated answer, but to keep it brief, basically, the FBI claimed that a group of men from various militia groups were planning to kidnap and potentially kill Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. They arrested these guys 1 month before the 2020 election in a very obvious October surprise, and they called this the biggest domestic terror case in a generation.
Do you think the case was a hoax? And if it was, what were the motives of the FBI?
Well, yes, I do think it was a hoax, and I think that there's a variety of motives. Like for the case agents, they wanted a big domestic terror case that would be a career maker. These agents get promoted, they get monetary incentives for that. I think for the FBI, having foiled a big plot like this kind of helps justify their existence. And I think also a main goal that the FBI had generally was to try to foment political violence in the lead up to the 2020 election. And I think that part of the goal also was to sway the election, with the arrest being done 1 month before the election. This was a talking point for the Biden Harris campaign. And I think part of it was rehabilitating Whitmer's image after the COVID lockdown fiasco.
In recent days, just on to that point, it sounds like President Trump is talking about pardoning these men. Do you think that he will?
I believe they deserve to be pardoned. I want to say that these men are innocent. We have two men right now in Supermax prison in Florence, Colorado, under solitary confinement conditions. We have three being held in state prisons across Michigan who unfortunately can't be pardoned by Trump, but I think they should be pardoned by Whitmer. How funny would that be? But I believe the president will do the right thing. He's a father, and I think he will pardon these men.
I've seen that you've mentioned in other articles and other outlets and interviews that you've done the FBI's Patcon operation. Could you go into more detail on what that is?
Yes, Patcon was an FBI operation dating back to around the early 1990s. It was kind of like COINTELPRO, but aimed at right wing Christian militia style groups. Many people believe Ruby Ridge, Waco, Oklahoma City were all Patcon operations.
And in your research, you mentioned that you've run across a wider plan and scope that the FBI was originally planning. What was the FBI planning, and how far did it reach?
Well, they had created a fake national 3%er militia group. They had infiltrated a group called the Wolverine Watchmen, and they called and chaired a nationwide militia meetup where they brought these people together. They appear to have had targets across 14 states, and they were aiming to make this like a multi state domestic terror plot.
What went wrong in that plan?
Well, unfortunately, they just weren't able to get it off the ground. Because there was no actual plots or plans to do anything, they had to rely on following people around with like a network of informants and recording them saying incendiary things when they were drunk or stoned, or, putting on these meetings, having these FTXs, and they needed to get enough video or audio to manufacture the appearance of something, and they simply couldn't do it at the scale that they were hoping to.
How was this case reported by the mainstream press, and what do you think that they got wrong?
Well, for the left wing press, they covered this as like these men were far right, white supremacist militias radicalized by Trump, and the early conservative media, not all of them, but some of them were like saying that the guys were Antifa or that they were anarchists and kind of like distancing themselves from it. So that was the initial coverage, but the mainstream media itself was complete nonsense. They literally were just regurgitating the government's narrative. and they didn't do any independent research into the case. They didn't, reach out to these men, actually interview them, interview witnesses who were at meetings or FTXs. So they pretty much got the entire thing wrong.
Now, for your upcoming documentary, Kidnap and Kill, you've spent almost 5 years on this case, getting to know the many different defendants. You mentioned the 4 different trials that have gone on. In all of your research, can you give us some idea of the most shocking things that you've uncovered so far?
Well, there almost all of it is shocking. I think some of the main points was that the FBI used a pedophile as one of their main informants and key architects of this hoax. He was operating a fake charity called Race to Unite Races. And at certain points, he offered the guys the use of $5,000 prepaid credit cards, trying to get them to make like large purchases of ammunition or firearms, things that the government could then use to say, look, they were stockpiling, they were planning something. All of the men turned this down. Nobody took the credit cards. The FBI, during the course of this investigation, was running a fake national militia group with different informants posing as different heads of state chapters. So, this is like a lot that the FBI uses social media to target people. They have what they call OCEs, online covert employees, who maintain personas and use the internet to target people. They planted evidence on people. We had an informant who offered the use of an explosives laden drone to be flown into the North Carolina vacation home of Ralph Northam. And that's just scratching the surface.
Wow, this is going to be great. I mean, how is the documentary coming along?
Well, we're making good progress, but we still need to hit our fundraising goal to get it done the right way. I don't want to sacrifice quality. I don't want to have to trim the story down. So it's a lot of work, and we're a small team of like 3 of us who are working on this. So we're making good progress, though.
And this is your first documentary,
Yes, it's
and
our
you
first documentary.
and you've put this all together yourself. And I mean, this has been a passion for you.
Yes, absolutely. I just, I started covering it as like an independent journalist. And then after the first federal trial ended with 2 men being acquitted and a mistrial on Adam and Barry, I reached out to one of the guys who was acquitted to interview him. And I realized just from talking to him that there was so much about this story that didn't even make its way into the courtroom. So if you were just covering it from that end, you wouldn't know about it. And even having gone through the discovery, read the court filings, there was still so much I didn't know. And so that kind of sparked my thoughts that this has to be a documentary, it has to be a film, somebody has to get this story, somebody has to document it. And so it just it went from there.
Well, it sounds great. Your upcoming documentary is Kidnap and Kill. Christina, thank you for your time. Everyone, please check out her Twitter feed and her upcoming documentary, Kidnap and Kill, when it comes out this fall. Thanks so much for your time.
And support the film. I do want to plug the fundraiser for it real quick, which is
Sure.
just our website is the letter K and kfilm.com. I chose that because I didn't want to get a website called kidnappingkill.com because like if I'm not on a list, I certainly would be after that. So it's just the letters K and kfilm.com. You can go to the website, you can watch the trailer there, you can find ways to support the film, and you can also find the addresses for the guys if you want to write to them. I encourage people to send them letters. I think that's super important for keeping their spirits up.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for your time, Christina.
Thank you.